Black Op Radio presents 50 Reasons for 50 Years. Why the Warren Commission may be the greatest fraud perpetrated on the American public. Now your host, Len Osanek.
This episode, we discuss the president's back wound, which the Warren Commission had to move up to the neck to make their scenario plausible. By withholding actual photos and using an artist's rendition derived solely from Dr. Humes and Boswell's memories, the Warren Commission managed to sell this lie as long as the public never saw the original photos. Author, researcher, Pat Speer explains how they did this.
This is Pat Speer, creator of the Mysterious Death of Number 35 video series and the author of a free book on the assassination at patspeer.com. On the evening of November 22, 1963, an autopsy was conducted on Kennedy's body by Drs. Humes, Boswell, and Fink. While examining the president's body, they noted a tracheotomy incision on Kennedy's throat and a bullet hole in his back, and marked these on a face sheet, an outline of a body in which wounds are noted. The next morning, Dr. Humes supposedly called Dr. Perry, the emergency room doctor who tried to save Kennedy's life in Dallas. Perry told Humes that the tracheotomy incision was cut through a small bullet wound on Kennedy's throat. This led Humes to conclude the bullet entering Kennedy's back had exited Kennedy's throat. There was a problem with this, however. Kennedy was believed to have been shot from the 6th floor of a building barely 60 yards behind him, and the back wound on the face sheet was below the level of the throat wound. This problem was first noted by Warren Commission General Counsel J. Lee Rankin in the January 27, 1964 executive session of the Warren Commission. Rankin told the commissioners that he'd be seeking some help from the doctors on this issue, and this help was soon to come. In preparation for their March 16, 1964 testimony before the commission, Drs. Humes and Boswell were asked to prepare some schematic drawings demonstrating the location of Kennedy's wounds and the paths of the bullets through his body. These drawings showed the back wound to be well above the throat wound and consistent with a shot fired from 6 stories up and 60 yards or more behind. This solution to the problem, however, made at least one member of the commission's staff nervous. On April 30, 1964, Arlen Specter, the future senator, and the counsel charged with taking all the medical testimony, dashed off a memo to General Counsel Rankin. He wrote that, in preparation of the commission's upcoming reenactment of the shooting, it is essential for the commission to know precisely the location of the bullet wound on the president's back, so that the angle may be calculated. And this was doubly important because Commission exhibits numbers 385, 386, and 388 were made from the recollections of the autopsy surgeons as told to the artist. Someday, someone may compare the films with the artist's drawings and find a significant error which might substantially affect the essential testimony and the commission's conclusions. Specter was shown the autopsy photo of Kennedy's back wound on May 24, 1964, the day of the commission's reenactment. It shows the wound to have been on Kennedy's back. And yet, from the day of the reenactment, in the chapters Specter wrote for the Warren Commission, and in his subsequent writings and interviews, he almost always said this wound was at the base of the back of Kennedy's neck. And it's worse than that. Although Specter knew full well the chalk mark used to mark Kennedy's wound location during the reenactment was on his back, he took the testimony of Agent Thomas Kelly on June 4, 1964, and asked Kelly the basis for the marking on the wound on the back of the president's neck, and said nothing as Kelly falsely claimed it had been Commission CE 386, which showed the wound to be at the base of the back of the neck. Specter then made sure that the only photo of his trajectory analysis entered into evidence failed to show the chalk mark. What was Specter up to? Was he lying to hide that Kennedy's and Connolly's wounds didn't align with a shot from the sniper's nest, and that the medical evidence failed to support the conclusions the Commission had already come to? It appears so.
Both of these are blow-ups from the Warren Commission report. Now, there are people who think they see discrepancies in that this drawing, what you've called an entry wound at the base of the neck of the president, shows it to be, or seems to show it to be, in the upper back near the shoulder blade, considerably below the base of the neck, whereas this drawing does show the entry wound to be at the base of the neck. Now, could you talk about these and reconcile that?
Yes, sir. This first drawing is a sketch These are on sheets of paper present in the room in which examination is conducted and are routinely used to mark in general, we feel, that the measurements which are noted here at the margins of the drawing are the precise measurements which we took. Now, the acromion is the extreme outermost portion of the shoulder. The tip of the mastoid is a bony prominence just behind the ear. And where these two lines intersect was, in actuality, where this wound was situated. Now, the second drawing, which you mentioned, was prepared to rather schematically and as accurately as we possibly could depict the story for the members of the Warren Commission.
In this drawing, you were trying to be precise.
Yes, sir, we were. We were trying to be precise and refer back to our measurements that we had made. Also, of course, since this time, we had opportunity to review the photographs which we made. These photographs show very clearly that the wound was exactly where we stated it to be in our testimony before the Warren Commission.
Your re-examination of the photographs verify that the wounds were as shown here?
Yes, sir, they do.
In 1978, Dr. Michael Baden, speaking before the House Select Committee on Assassinations, testified that a panel of 9 top forensic pathologists had concluded that the wound Specter and the Warren Commission had declared was at the base of the back of the neck and well above the throat wound was in fact on Kennedy's back and below the throat wound. This was huge news. These doctors, moreover, had decided that the trajectory of a bullet connecting this wound with the wound on Kennedy's throat was inconsistent with Kennedy's forward lean in the Zapruder film unless he'd been hit while behind the sign in the film. This was a problem for the House Select Committee in that their photographic panel has simultaneously concluded Kennedy had been hit before going behind the sign in the film. This problem was quickly overcome. A trajectory panel had been given the authority to move the locations of Kennedy's wounds in order to make the trajectories work. And so it's true. On September 7, 1978, Dr. Michael Baden testified that the back wound at the base of Kennedy's neck in Warren Commission Exhibit 385 was 2 inches too high, only to have trajectory expert Thomas Canning present exhibits 5 days later with a wound in this identical location. So why move the wound upwards? Well, connecting the location of the back wound as interpreted by the pathology panel with the location of the throat wound as interpreted by the pathology panel leads right through Kennedy's first rib and spine. The single bullet trajectory doesn't work, and a number of those tasked with investigating Kennedy's assassination were more than aware of this, and yet chose to say nothing. If all the shots came from the sniper's nest in the manner described by the government, why did the government's investigators so obviously and so brazenly lie?
Stay tuned for the next installment as we expose week after week 50 lies the Warren Commission would like you to believe.